voices in the hum. There's a certain coldness in office buildings after everyone has gone home. The leftover fluorescent lights settle into a steady drone, an unchanging mechanical sigh that seeps into your bones. For Mara, it was supposed to be just another late night filing quarterly reports. She didn't expect to feel alone in a room full of glowing fixtures, but that was before the voices began. Mara leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. The last train home left hours ago, and the empty cubicles stretched ahead like tombstones in a deserted graveyard. She switched her attention from the spreadsheet on her screen to the ceiling above, where the long, pale tubes buzzed with life. That hum had always been there, dull and unremarkable. But tonight, beneath it, something else lurked, the faintest overlap of syllables so soft she blamed her imagination. She pressed her fingertips against her ears. Nothing but the steady, droning hum. "You're hearing things," she told herself, a mantra she repeated like a prayer. But the whispers grew more insistent. They weren't words, not at first, just shuddering breaths, half-formed echoes that seemed to slide along the wires. When she paused her typing, the room felt suddenly too small, the air too thick. She sighed, flipped off the desk lamp, and stood. "Break's over," she muttered to the empty chairs. 10 minutes later, the whispers had become clearer. Between the whir of the HVAC and the distant drip of a cooling tower, Mara heard her name, Mara. She froze. The syllable trembled through the hum, intimate as a lover's breath and cold as a dishonoured promise. She should have sworn aloud, called security, done anything but stand there with her skin crawling. "Who's there?" Silence. Then the hum resumed, steady. But now, threaded through it, came a chorus of soft voices, murmuring fragments. "We're here. Can't leave. Remember." They rolled together like smoke, impossible to grasp. Mara's heart thudded. She darted back to her desk and grabbed her phone, raising it as if it could ward off ghosts. The recorder app showed nothing but flat lines. The hum filled her ears, the voices hid behind its wall. She scrolled her contacts, thumb shaking. "Security guard," she hesitated. They said the guard left at 10. It was now 3. Better than nothing. Her finger hovered. The next whisper reached inside her, soft and urgent. "Mara, look." Her gaze snapped upward. One tube flickered as though blinking. Behind its milky glass, shadows seemed to coil, shapes too sinuous to be wiring. A pale smear in darkness. Mara stood on tiptoe. The whisper came again. "Mara." She yanked at the pull chain above the copier, switching off half the lights. Darkness pooled on the ceiling. For a ragged moment, the hum faded, and she heard something, scratching, like claws on metal, half caught by memory, half dream. Then the power clicked back, and the lights hummed louder, as if annoyed. She fled her desk and sprinted down the corridor, heels clicking, echoing off pale walls. At the end, the emergency exit sign flickered. She yanked the door, locked. A soft chuckle came overhead. It can't be real. But the laughter was too human, too familiar. She pounded her fists against the door. It swung open, no one waiting. A dark staircase yawned downward. She hesitated, then plunged in. The stairwell descended 7 floors. Each landing was colder than the last, the hum of lights dimming into a distant heartbeat. Mara's breathing came in gasps. Her thoughts scattered like leaves in wind. On the 6th floor, she nearly slipped on something slick. Her own tears. She shook her head and pressed on, ignoring the whispers trailing her. "Follow. Don't hide." At floor 3, the lights went out. Plunged in darkness, she counted steps until the emergency bulbs flickered on, red, dim, oppressive. The hum here was a low moan, like metal grieving. Then, right beside her, a voice whispered, "We're all here." She spun. No one. Just the wall, painted institutional grey. But behind the paint, something pulsed, as though the building itself was breathing. Finally, she burst into the ground floor lobby. The front doors yawned wide. Cold air rushed in, carrying the distant hum of traffic. She didn't look back, ran out into the empty plaza, blinking under the street lamps. Silence wrapped around her like a relief. No hum, no voices. She fumbled for her phone. No missed calls, no messages. Maybe she'd imagined it. Stress, isolation, an office personality test that never ended. That night, she didn't go home. She drove to the only place that felt safe, her old apartment where lights were dusty, curtains drawn. She turned on every lamp she'd owned, table, floor, even the Christmas lights coiled around the balcony rail. The hum of the city felt gentler than the fluorescent drone. In the following days, Mara avoided the office. She called in sick, claimed migraines. But at home, every hard surface seemed to store the memory of those voices. The refrigerator's hum, the buzzing of the neon street sign across the street, each carried a whisper she didn't want to hear. "I'm losing my mind," she confessed to the empty room, yet every night, beneath the mundane drone of electricity, she heard them again, soft, multi-layered, calling her. 3 days later, she returned. She needed to prove it hadn't happened, or that she wasn't insane. Inside the lobby, the security guard eyed her warily. "Late nights again?" he asked. Mara nodded, swallowing. She climbed to the 10th floor and flicked on the lights. The hum filled the silence, as familiar as breathing. She sat at her desk, placed her hands on the keyboard, and waited. Nothing. She exhaled. 10 minutes passed. No whispers. She laughed, tension unraveling. Maybe this time she'd done it. The office had aced her with a joke, and she'd fallen for it. Then, in the stillness behind her, the hum deepened. A single word slithered forth. Finally. Mara spun in her chair. The tube above her flickered, then glowed steady. The hum settled into a low throb, like a pulse, and then a third voice joined in, quiet but crystal clear. "Welcome home." Her blood turned to ice. She could not speak, because somewhere in that hum, tangled deep beneath the lights, she recognized an old refrain, the murmur of her childhood lullaby, the voice of her mother singing in darkness. Except her mother had died long ago, and these lights, these whispers, knew things her mother never could. They knew her fear, her grief, the secret she carried, tucked away like a splinter in her mind. "Thank you for letting us in." Mara pressed her palms to her ears, but the hum had already filled her veins. The voices were inside her now, knitting themselves into her blood. When the guard found her minutes later, she sat in her chair, chest rising and falling to the rhythm of the hum, her eyes, wide and unblinking, fixed on the ceiling. She never spoke again. Sometimes, late at night, the guard says he still hears her whispering above the spreadsheets, carried on the hum of fluorescence across empty cubicles. "Hello, Mother. I've come home.